Good morning. Surprising as it may seem, we are having difficulty getting past a certain hump. We have learned the language of I am. We have made it our slogan, our wallpaper, our morning chant, our evening lullaby. And yet, for many, it has not freed us. It has left us a little more strained, more self-conscious, secretly disappointed, watching for results out here while something inside keeps pulsing, not yet, not yet. Do you see that? We meant well. We wanted courage, supply, companionship, health. We said, I am strong, I am wealthy, I am loved. And for a flicker it soothed the nerves, it lifted the chin. But when the day pressed, the old tremor returned, and with it the quiet fear that the human self must push harder, think better, say more. And friends, that is the hump. Permit me to offer, kindly but plainly, a warning and a permission. Do not say, I am again, until you understand what the Master meant. That is not a prohibition born of severity. It is a permission to stop straining. Because used wrongly, I am becomes a polished ego, an anxiety management trick, even a subtle atheism in spiritual clothing. Atheism because it leaves God out and installs a very dedicated human in God's chair. Do you see that? The danger is not in the two words. The danger is in the belief that the one speaking them is a separate human person attempting to seize the scepter. Then I am is personal will trying to become God, and you feel the fatigue of carrying a universe you did not create. We are not here to condemn affirmations. We are here to restore the term to its rightful sanctity. Before Abraham was, I am, is not a brand, not a boast. It is revelation. It is the announcement of presence, the disclosure that the life we are seeking is the life doing the seeking. The point is not to make a better managed human personality. The point is to awaken to Christ as the activity of God, the I that is before your thought about yourself. Only there is safety. Only there is fruit that remains. And so the aim of our time is simple: to move I am from the bulletin board of the mind into the living sanctuary of realization, to shift from words about to the word as. I am not here as an authority to be depended upon. Frankly, I cannot do this for you, nor can any book or recording do it for you. I am a willing instrument, yes, to say, be still and let you be God, and to point where the light rises, in you. It is your turning within that matters, your consent to grace. If you will, even now, lay down the little scepter and let the inner silence say its own name, you will feel the strain begin to loosen. The hump yields not to louder statements, but to the quiet recognition, I can of my own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Do you see that? Then we can go on. Now let us look plainly at what happens when I am is picked up as mental leverage. You know the pattern. I am successful. I am whole. I am enough. I am safe. Said, sometimes 10 times, sometimes 100 times, as if the repetition could push a mountain or silence a storm. What is really being attempted there? A human self is trying to move life by willpower, by optimism, by emotional persuasion. It is a dear effort. I do not question the sincerity. But I must say to you that it is still the same old bondage wearing nicer clothes. Do you see that? Because hidden under those brave words is a premise. and we must not let it pass unexamined. A separate me over here is trying to become more, get more, fix more, reach a good over there. That is duality. It is me and my condition on one side, and the fulfillment on the other. Me and my mind talking to God or to the universe as if to a distant ally, hoping enough charged sentences will bridge the gap. And so, at heart, it is not the I that was before Abraham. It is the I that woke up anxious this morning and is now attempting to become divine by effort. Do you see why that cannot be the way? No, this is not mind power, not positive thinking, not metaphysical platitude cliché business, not repeating sentences to make God obey, not polishing a mirror that has no light of its own. For in that mode, the human self is appointed savior of its own experience. The job description you gave yourself, without meaning to, was, keep the world together with thoughts. And the symptom of that appointment is tension. You feel it in the shoulders, in the breath. You feel it when the bill arrives or the doctor speaks, and immediately the machine starts. Say the words fast enough, loud enough, with enough emotional voltage to drown out the evidence. Do you see that? Do you see why it exhausts you? It exhausts because the separate self must be vigilant against the world's beliefs, must maintain a posture of triumph over appearances, must hold a pose. It becomes theater. And the more heroic the lines, the more fragile the stage. This is why, after a time, disillusionment creeps in. I said it, and still the fear returned. Of course it returned. The premise was that you, as a human personality, are the performer and the performance and the power behind both. And behind that premise is the hidden suggestion that God is absentee and must be summoned by better phrasing. I tell you again, we are not here to make God answer to our sentences. We are here to discover that the living presence is the only I, and therefore there is no gap to bridge, no mountain to push, no storm to hypnotize. Until that is touched, I am, as self-help will keep you on the treadmill, ever speaking, never resting, because it makes you the savior. And you are tired because you were never appointed to that office. Do you see that? When you see it, something in you will drop the rope, and that is the beginning of freedom. Now, if we are to get off that treadmill, we must let the Master himself interpret the word. Before Abraham was, I am. What is he saying? He is not introducing a superior biography. He is not advertising an improved human identity with roots farther back than Abraham. He is pointing to a presence that is before time, before lineage, before the shifting sands of personality and history. Do you see that? He is revealing the I that is not born and does not die, the I that is not threatened by the day's conditions, because it is the life of all days. When he says, I am, he is voicing the divine selfhood, the very being that is your being, my being, God as individual being. Now hear that alongside his other words, and you will see the contour of one revelation, not scattered sayings. I and the Father are one. That does not read, I, Jesus, have an exceptional hotline, and the rest of you must try harder. It is the statement of identity in God. I can of mine own self do nothing. That is not modesty training. It is the procedure. It closes the door to personal boasting and opens the window to presence. The Father within me, he doeth the works. Do you catch the rhythm? Not personal mind doing, but indwelling life being itself as activity. Do you see that? Put together, these are not ornaments for doctrine. They are the way. In the language we use here, let me give you the translation that will keep you safe. The I that can say, I am, with authority, is not Joel, not Mary, not the anxious self that woke up to bills and symptoms. The I is Christ, the activity of God appearing as individual being. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. And therefore, whenever you are tempted to use I am as a psychological pick-me-up, first ask within, who is the I speaking? If it is the personality looking for lift, be still. Do not utter it. Let the inner silence speak its own name. Then, I am is revelation, not rhetoric. This is the guardrail, and it is loving, because it saves you from reducing the holy to a technique. If you keep I am at the level of personal psychology, you have turned the Christ into a lever to move furniture in the world, and you will be disappointed because the Christ is not a lever. The Christ is the life of God being itself as your very life, and grace does the work. Our function is not to strap I am onto a human project. Our function is to consent. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Then the words are not pushing anything. They are bearing witness to what already is. So when you read, before Abraham was, I am, take it as procedure. Pause, turn within, release the personal claimant, and let that which is before your thought, before your name, announce itself. It will not shout. It will not perform for your timetable. But when it stirs, the strain drops, the burden shifts, and the works, whatever they are in that moment, are done by the Father within. Do you see that? This is how Scripture ceases to be a banner and becomes bread. Now let us plant, and plant deeply, the only safe meaning of those words. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Not sometimes, not when the mood is high. God is individual being, and therefore, when the Master speaks, I am, he is not decorating a human personality. He is voicing the fact that the life of God is the life of this very identity. Do you see that? All that the Father hath is mine, not mine as ego, not mine as a personal treasury to spend on whim, but mine as oneness, as the nature of my being, because I and the Father are one. The moment you hear it that way, the breath eases, because you are not being asked to become something. You are being asked to consent to what is. Now I know the fear that rises. Isn't this pride? Isn't this blasphemy? No. It is the end of pride. It is the end of blasphemy. Pride says, look what I have done. The revelation says, I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works. Do you see how that strips the medals off the human chest? There is no personal authorship left to preen. There is only gratitude and holy awe as the works appear. Not your works, not my works. The Father's works made visible as form, as harmony, as peace. And you stand there not to take credit, but to bear witness. That is not arrogance. That is humility crowned with authority, the authority of truth. This is not duality. This is not turning to a far-off God, pleading for supply, for safety, for wisdom. No. This is merely in the most sacred sense, the turning within to acknowledge that the very I that hears these words is the offspring of God. the presence of God individualizing as you. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Therefore, the place whereon I stand is holy ground. Not because of geography, not because of temple walls, but because God is here as I. Do you see that? Not personal I-ness elevated to a throne, but the divine I revealing itself where the mask of person once seemed to be. And this is why we cannot confuse it with affirmation culture. Affirmations usually try to add qualities to a struggling self. Add courage, add health, add success. This revelation dissolves the belief that there is a self apart from God to be improved. It is not your task to paste divinity on humanity. It is your privilege to let humanity yield into its truth, which is divinity expressed. Then you are no longer patching the costume. You are waking to the actor, the one life playing all parts. Do you follow that? Here is the safety. When I am is heard as God's self-disclosure, you stop using words as weapons and begin to rest in being. You do not strain to make good happen. You watch grace reveal the good that is. You do not seize, you consent. You do not manage, you witness. And in that witnessing, you find the deep quiet. Because nothing can happen to you except what happens to God. And God is the only happening. Then the words, when they come, are gentle, almost unnecessary, echoes of a presence already known. And if they do not come, there is still the peace. For the I that is before Abraham is awake as you. Do you see that? That is the core. And it is safe. Let us draw a clean line right here. As long as truth remains in a book, it is literature. As long as it sits on a meme, a reel, a trending audio clip saying, I am this, I am that, it is still literature. And as long as we repeat it because it felt good to hear, we are reciting literature. Do you see that? There is no power in the letters until the life behind the letters stirs in you as realization. Words do not transform. Realized consciousness does. The difference is night and day, bondage and freedom. We are living in a time when inspiration can be spooned out in seconds. Mantras under music, I am lists with a sunrise filter, 10-second confidence hacks dressed in scripture. I am not scorning them. I am describing their limitation. They can remind, they can nudge, they can turn your chair a few degrees toward the window. But unless the sun rises within, unless the principle becomes your very awareness, nothing has changed except the mood. Entertainment is not embodiment. Stimulation is not realization. You can feel encouraged at 7 a.m. and be in the same snare by noon, because the premise of a separate self managing appearances hasn't been met. Do you see? Now, embodiment. What do we mean? The moment a principle ceases to be a sentence you admire and becomes the state you are living that scripture. When I and the Father are one is not a quotation, but the felt fact of your own being. It functions as law in your experience. Then guidance is not hoped for from outside. It moves as impulse from within. Then supply is not hunted in people or events. It appears as form because the allness is realized as your life. Then safety is not pleaded for. It is the presence recognized where you stand. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. When this is embodied, the sentence is almost unnecessary, because the consciousness of it is the law. Permit me to be plain with you. It doesn't help me that I gave this talk last week or wrote it last year. I do not get to live on yesterday's bread. Each situation calls me again to be still, to let the Father be the life of this moment. There are mornings when the old world suggestions knock, and I feel a battle rising, not with people or conditions, but with the suggestion that I, as a person, must do something. And then I must sit, quietly, until the burden moves off my shoulders and I can say, and mean, I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, Thou doest the works. Do you see that? The battle is for realization, not for words. So the practical turn now is simple. Stop asking, what should I say? Begin asking, what am I consenting to be true about God and about myself right now? Not tomorrow, not when the mood is sweet. Now. Am I consenting that God is the life of me, the mind of me, the law of me? Am I consenting that grace is the sufficiency in this very circumstance? If so, let the tongue be silent until the heart bears witness. Then, if words come, they are witness words, not work words. And if they do not come, the presence will speak as peace, as release, as the lifting of fear. That is embodiment. That is power. Let us make this very practical. Suppose I come to you and say, with great conviction, 2 times 2 are 5. Now, you do not grab my lapels. You do not rush me to a clinic. You do not fight my face. Where do you meet it? You meet it where it is, in the realm of belief. You turn to your own understanding and quietly correct the premise. 2 times 2 are 4. You do not need to overpower me. One clear realization in you dissolves the error for what it is, nothing, but an incorrect conclusion. Do you see that? So with conditions, lack, fear, sickness, insecurity, they parade with noise, they demand combat, and the human self reaches for weapons. Stronger thoughts, louder affirmations, longer lists. But the condition is not the enemy. The enemy, if we can use that word for a moment, is the premise beneath the condition. The belief that a separate human self must take the field and make God happen. That is, 2 times 2 are 5. That is the misused I am attempting to add inches to a shadow. Do you see that? The instant you accept that battlefield, you are in competition. With psychology, with medicine, with circumstances, with personalities, with bank balances, with calendars. And we are not in competition at all. Not competing with psychology, not competing with medicine, not competing with climate or food or germs or economies, not competing with sin, with purity, with luck, with fate. We are meeting a suggestion, a claim, an appearance in consciousness, a belief. Where must it be met? Within your own awareness, where alone it seems to be operating. Do you follow that? Affirmations, when used as clubs, keep the fight outside. They try to drown out the evidence by volume. But the Christ way goes to the root. It refuses the false premise. It says within, quietly, God is the only law, the only power, the only being. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Therefore, I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, Thou doest the works. And right there, the arithmetic is corrected. The moment the premise is corrected, the sum must reveal itself as 4. The outer picture yields to the inner law without a struggle, because law does not wrestle. It is. So when a condition knocks, and it will knock, do not wrestle the door. Sit down. turn within. Acknowledge, this is not a person, not a body, not a bank book confronting me. This is a suggestion that God is absent and I must supply the lack. And then, be still until the presence announces itself. Let thy grace be the sufficiency here. Let thy activity be the only activity. I am a willing instrument. I will not take the throne. Wait until the burden slides from your shoulders and you can feel, yes, the arithmetic is set right. Then, if action is required, it will come as a gentle impulse. If words are to be spoken, they will be witness words, not work words. And often, listen, often the greatest works are done when there are no words at all. Because grace, not your effort, has corrected the premise and done the work. Do you see that? This is practical metaphysics, not battling shadows, but turning on the light. And so, if we are not to fight shadows, and we are not to shout down appearances, what then does the work? Not your brighter mood, not your tightened jaw, not an I am with more voltage. Christ does the work. And let us be very clear, very practical. Christ is not a mindset. Christ is not you in a good headspace or with a high vibration. Christ is the activity of God as your very being, appearing as wisdom when wisdom is needed, as supply where form is required, as healing where harmony is due, as guidance where a step must be taken without personal strain. Do you see that? Now hear the refrain as operating law, not as poetry. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Say it within, not to arouse emotion, but to vacate the throne. It is procedure. It shuts the door on personal authorship so that grace may be the only actor on the stage. Father, thou doest the works. And then be still long enough to let that be so. The greatest achievements have come when there have been no words and no thoughts, because the doer was not the mind. The doer was the presence. Immediately you may ask, but isn't that passivity? Isn't that neglect of duty? No, this is not passivity. This is purity of agency. This is the end of the counterfeit author. You are not rendered inert. You are rendered available. You become a willing instrument. You are watchful, attentive, present-handed, but you have relinquished the private pen that tries to write God's story. Action often follows, yes, but as a gentle impulse that carries its own peace, never as a pressured push that carries your fear. Do you see that? How will you know when grace is present? The sign is ease. A warmth may come, a release, a quiet certainty that requires no pep talk. Sometimes tears, not of despair, of relief. The inner hurry ceases. A no lands as safely as a yes. The phone rings at the right moment. The memory returns. The appetite for battle dissolves. The body softens under the recognition that the law of its life is God. Often there are no words at all, only a stillness in which the answer is already the atmosphere. One touch of the Christ is enough to raise the dead. It does not need your fireworks. Let this, then, be our simple prayer in the hour of need. Practical, transferable, immediate. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this situation. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this body. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this home. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this decision. Extend it as far as your horizon reaches, unto this office, this journey, this child. this nation. And then, be silent. Not as a magician, not as a manager of atmospheres, but as witness to the only activity. Sit, if only 3 minutes, and consent. I am a willing instrument. I will not take the throne. Father, thou doest the works. God is individual being. God is my being. And because that is so, nothing can happen to me except what happens to God, and only God is happening. Then, if a step is given, take it without strain. If no step is given, rest without guilt. The power is not your affirmation. The power is Christ as grace doing the work through you. Do you see that? This is the ease on the other side of the hump. This is the activity that never tires. Now let us give ourselves a disciplined permission, a loving boundary that sets you free from strain. Until you feel the inward shift from the anxious claimant to the quiet presence, refrain from making "I am" into a personal claim. Do you see that? Not because the words are wrong, but because the one trying to say them is still the performer on the stage. So instead of saying, "I am this, I am that" all day, we will do this. We will enter micro-intervals of surrender. 3 to 5 minutes, several times a day. No fixing, no rehearsing, no arguing. You sit, you close the door, if only inwardly, and you consent to be nothing of your own and everything of God. How? Gently. Father, I am willing. I can of mine own self do nothing. Thou doest the works. And then be still. If a question is before you, do not solve it. Present it. Father, is this for us right now? Say it just like that. For us. Because you and the Father are one, and you are not looking to a far-off counselor. You are acknowledging the presence within as your wisdom. Then wait. The impulse will come, yes or no, not from fear, not from pride, but as a soft rightness, a settledness. A yes will carry ease. A no will carry the same ease. If you detect hurry, bargaining, or a need to justify, be patient. That is the old claimant rattling the doorknob. Wait until the doorknob is still. Do you see that? Now replace affirmation with realization. Instead of "I am abundant," rest in "God is my being, therefore supply is not outside me. All that the Father hath is mine, because God is individual being as me." Stay there until the appetite to grab at forms loosens and you can feel that guidance arises within, not from people, not from headlines, not from balance sheets, but from the presence. Instead of "I am healthy," rest in "God is the life of this body. The law of this body is God. Nothing can happen to me except what happens to God." Not as magic, not as denial, but as recognition. And if no words at all feel right, then let the recognition be wordless, a quiet leaning into the fact of oneness. Build the day around these little altars. Upon waking, before work, at noon, in the late afternoon when the mind would snack on worry, in the evening before sleep. 3 minutes, 4, 5, and yes, in the heat of a decision, right then. You may have to return 100 times a day. Do you see that? And that is not failure. That is practice. Each return loosens the habit of personal authorship and strengthens the awareness of the indwelling actor. Do not measure by fireworks. Measure by the lightness of the shoulders, by the absence of inner hurry, by the clarity with which a yes or a no lands without argument. If after a minute the mind begins to chant to feel safe, smile and stop. No slogans, no managing atmospheres. Just, I am a willing instrument. Father, thou doest the works. Then wait. If a step is given, take it without strain. If none is given, rest without guilt. This is the disciplined permission. Do not use I am as a slogan. Turn within until the presence speaks as quiet realization. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. And grace will do the work. Do you see that? Now naturally, as this ripens in you, someone will come and say, "Help me," and everything in you will want to reach for your best advice, your clever technique, your understanding. And then, do you see it? You will begin to feel responsible for the outcome. And responsibility, the way the human self carries it, turns into strain, turns into bargaining with God, turns into quiet pride if it works, and quiet guilt if it does not. That is the old office trying to reopen under a new name. Do you see that? Real help cannot come from your personality or mine. If it does, we have only transferred dependency from their problem to our personality. And that is not love. That is bondage dressed as service. A man or a woman sins when they leave another in the position of believing they need that person. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. Do you catch the procedure in that? Our task is not to be the doer, but to vacate the throne so that the Comforter, the activity of the Christ, may be the only actor. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. So when someone asks for help, let this be your first sentence, spoken gently, without mystery. Let us go to God together. Not, let me fix you. Not, let me teach you a method. Not, repeat after me. Let us go to God together. Then, inwardly, immediately, turn. Father, thy grace be the sufficiency unto this individual, unto this situation, unto this condition. Be specific inside, not as magic, as recognition. God is individual being. God is this one's being, as surely as God is my being. Christ is present. The activity is already underway. I will be still. Do you see? Nothing must come to me, no glory, no gratitude, no proof, no payment to the ego. I am merely a transparency through which the light may shine. You may feel a warmth, a loosening, a quiet authority announcing itself, not personal, not theatrical. Often words will come, but they will be witness words, not work words. All is well. Be not afraid. Or simply, let us be still a moment. And often the greatest help arrives when no words come at all. The presence moves, the atmosphere clears, tears may fall, not from despair but relief, and an answer begins to shape itself from within them. Yes, within them. This protects you from spiritual superiority and protects them from spiritual dependency. Do you see that? And should the outer picture take time, you are not disappointed because you were not the doer. You do not manipulate. You do not measure. You do not rehearse tomorrow's report. You remain in instrument identity. I am willing, Father. Use me if there is anything to say or do. Otherwise, let thy grace flow unobserved. Then, if a suggestion arises, make a call, rest, see a doctor, forgive, wait. It carries its own ease. If nothing arises, you rest in the same ease. The burden is not on your shoulders. The government is upon His shoulder. One touch of the Christ is enough. It does not need the weight of your cleverness. Practice this until it is your reflex. Let us go to God together. Turn. Father, Thou doest the works. Recognize, God is individual being, this one's being, my being. Consent, nothing from me, everything through me. And then watch how service becomes simple, how relationships sweeten without strings, how gratitude, when it appears, is not to you, but to the presence that both of you felt. That is true help. That is Christ flowing through, not you fixing someone with words. Do you see that? Now a word that may sting before it heals. Dependency does not only wear vestments and sit behind pulpits. In our time, it also wears code and content calendars. Algorithms that spoon-feed you motivation at the hour they think you will click. Influencers with a new I am reel each morning. Paid courses promising to keep your consciousness up. Subscription apps and daily affirmation programs that whisper, "Stay with us, or your light will dim." Do you see that? We have traded one priesthood for another, one temple for another. Only now the incense smells like branding, and the offering plate auto-renews on your card. Hear me gently, but plainly. A man or a woman sins when they leave you in the position of believing that you in any wise need them. If a teaching, a teacher, a church, an app, an algorithm, an influencer, a program, or a trend leaves you fearing collapse if you miss a day, it has missed Christ. That is not spiritual freedom. That is bondage with better packaging. The grace that sustains you is not on a server. The law of your being is not locked inside a paywall. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you see that? Affirmation culture can become a treadmill. As long as you keep the streak, you feel safe. Miss a day and a superstition creeps in. Something bad will happen. My manifestation will stall. That is not faith in God. That is fear of losing a method. And fear is a poor God. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. The Master's word is procedure. If the outer voice does not recede, you will never learn the inner tone. If the stream of prompts never quiets, you will not trust the river that rises within. The teacher you need is already present as your own being, not outside, not above, within. Do you follow that? I would rather every book, every recording, every feed vanish than for one of you to remain a spiritual dependent. If what I say today does not send you inward to the living presence, tear it up and forget it. This help has to come as the activity of the Christ, not as my understanding, not as a program, not as a streak. Thy grace is the sufficiency. Not my push, not their content, not today's mood. Thy grace. Let us strip it to the simplicity that even a child can live. 3 minutes of turning within, no slogans, no streaks, no guilt. Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. Thou doest the works. Then wait for the quiet yes or no that carries ease. Build no altar to methods. Build only this altar of surrender and recognition. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. When I am is recognized as God's presence and not as a program, the leash falls off. The notifications may keep buzzing in the world, but they lose authority within you. You will take what is useful and lay the rest down without fear, because you are no one's client and no trend's disciple. You are a transparency for the One. Do you see that? This is freedom from teachers and trends, not in rebellion, not in pride, but in holy sufficiency. So simple, a child can live it. Now, if you have come this far, let us speak plainly about the other side of the hump. There comes a conscious transition, sometimes gentle as dawn, sometimes sharp as a bell, when you stop trying to become spiritual and you begin recognizing spirit as your identity. The performer steps off the stage. The manager of outcomes lays down the clipboard. The anxious claimant gives back the crown. And in that moment, without trumpet or title, you find yourself not reaching for God, not persuading God, but recognizing. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you see that? Not tomorrow, not when the energy feels right, but here, now. The place whereon you stand is holy ground, because God is here as your being. This is the reconciliation of those mighty words. All that God is, I am. They are not a medal for the human chest. They are a mirror revealing your real selfhood. All that God is, life, love, wisdom, law, purity, peace, abundance, order, freedom, is the nature of the I that you are in God. Not the human boast, look what I have, but the quiet fact, this is what being is where I appear. I and the Father are one. Do you see how that undoes the old struggle? You are no longer attempting to attach divine qualities to a separate self. You are witnessing the divine qualities already constituting identity. This is not duality. This is merely the turning within to let the One I announce itself. And now, hear the catharsis as permission. Be still a moment. Let the words we have used fall like leaves to the ground. No slogans, no self-management, no reaching. Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. Thou doest the works. Be still until the shoulders ease. The breath goes out unforced. The hurry loses its authority. Wait, not for a sign you planned, but for the presence to announce itself without strain. A warmth, perhaps, or only a vast okayness. Nothing can happen to me except what happens to God. Let that be enough. Do you see that? The government is upon His shoulder. From this quiet, I am, rises of its own accord, not as weapon, but as witness. You may say it now, and it will not sting you with ego, for it is not the human self that speaks. I am becomes the living presence, voicing itself as individual being. It carries no push, no bargain, no scoreboard. It carries authority without noise, guidance without argument, sufficiency without clutching. And life, as you step from this stillness, becomes the outflow of grace and not the strain of self-help. You do not make the river run, you walk in its current. You do not manage light, you stand where light is. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you see that? We are across the threshold. Now, simply, quietly, let the holy ground carry you.